Welcome to this week's edition of HQ Spotlight. And you know how we were gifted an extra hour of sleep on Sunday? Well, we were gifted another ranked-on-ranked game this week thanks to the College Football Playoff Tuesday night release. So we've got BYU, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, and Missouri, and now Oregon and Iowa is our third ranked-on-ranked game. Shout out to Brandon Marcello, puts our power rankings together, had the Hawkeyes power rated the last 2 to 3 weeks. I think, Danny, you agreed as well on that front. So Danny Kanell, Chip Patterson, one half of the cover three. I'm Tommy Tran back here. Shout out to Chris Hassel for holding it down last week. Danny 9-8, Chip 7-10, and Danny, you're still 99-81. So you're off to, you had that nice little 3-4 week heater, still holding steady. Let's try to continue that trend and see if Chip can get to 500 or better. So let's tackle the three games here that we have, and it's Oregon at Iowa, big time on CBS. Ducks laying 6.5. Now, they were 6 in the AP poll, dropped 3 slots to the committee. And I mentioned Iowa now entering the chat, ranked 20th in the country. So before we get to picks, DK, just give me the lowdown on what you anticipate how this game goes, storyline-wise. What excites you the most?
Oh, I think we discovered something today. Have you ever had a meal that consists of motivational meat? Because we discovered that on the Cover 3 podcast. That is exactly what Dan Lanning has been handed by not only the selection committee, but also Phil Parker, the defensive coordinator at Iowa. Because if you remember, one of the things that really set Dan Lanning off was Mike Gundy saying how Oregon was, bought all their players and they had so many more resources. Well, Phil Parker said, I'll just say that Oregon is very well funded. It was a subtle shot, again, at the talent that Dan Lanning has been able to acquire, and I think that's exactly what he needs. And if he needed a little bit more, it was the drop that they had from the selection committee saying, you know what, your schedule is not as impressive as the AP voters thought, so they drop a little bit. I think that is a perfect meal to serve in the pregame meal Friday night. A little motivational meat there on the plate.
So, Chip, I don't know, is motivational meat plant-based? Is it grass-fed? I don't know, but what are you thinking about this one?
It ain't clean. I can tell you that, Tommy.
Yep.
It gets the job done, though. I think that this is an incredible test coming out of an off week after a couple of mercurial performances after the Indiana loss. So they lose to Indiana. They come right back. They absolutely throttle Rutgers. Then they get caught in some nasty conditions and kind of play down, just do what they needed to do to get the job done against Wisconsin. And I just don't think that we have really seen Oregon's best football in a long time. So I know we're going to do picks in a little bit, but to me, the starting point for this game is, did you base your thoughts on the Oregon Ducks on the fact that they beat Penn State in Happy Valley? Or did you think that Oregon was a good football team against any opponent? Because if you believed in the Oregon football team in terms of what they showed you with their dominance early in the season, well, then you're thinking that maybe the off week was a nice chance to reset heading into this home stretch. But if you think that this has been propped up by an Oklahoma State team that would soon fire its coach, by a Penn State team that would soon fire its coach, you see what I'm getting at here? Well, then maybe you're more in line with the selection committee that this is not the high-end college football team that we saw. So that is really the starting point for me, whether you lean one way or the other, is whether you believe Oregon was propped up by its resume or whether you believe they're a good football team.
Yeah, it's interesting, the prism that we looked at Oregon after that Penn State win and then how Penn State sort of dissolved, and all of a sudden everyone's saying the Ducks' schedule is not great. Well, the good news is for Dan Lanning and any Duck supporter, the schedule is going to get tougher the rest of the way, and this victory could end up being a notch on a path to that. So that being said, again, 6.5's the line, total low 40s. Chip, I'm going to go with you because you were talking about maybe seeing a better or best version of the Ducks. What are the chances we see that they win by a touchdown or more in this game?
I'm going to lay the points here with the Ducks, and I do not think that this will be any kind of runaway blowout win in terms of what's on the scoreboard, but I do think it's going to be a chance for this Oregon defense to really try to show up and bottle up Mark Gronowski. That's going to be the place where I think this is important. Your edge rushers, your interior defensive linemen, you've got to be able to win at the point of attack against a good Iowa offense, because if Iowa is able to stay on schedule and keep using that versatility that Gronowski Kanowski has with his ability to run, well, then defensively, you might get caught. And with a total as low as 41.5, 42, you know that just one explosive touchdown could be incredibly impactful. I think that Oregon comes in and they win this with defense. Now, I think they're going to be able to run the football effectively. It is looking like it could be a weather game, but this is where I need to remind you that while the conditions of cold and rainy in Iowa City are not exactly the same as in Eugene, it still has cold and rainy in Eugene, too. They're used to winning in those conditions as well.
So I do lean more your way with Oregon. I do think Oregon is the better team. I do think they've been kind of disrespected somewhat by the voters. And I get there's not a resume there, but I do think there are a couple blowouts on the schedule. One against Oklahoma State, but then the one against Rutgers might have been even more impressive. And I do actually think this matchup is pretty good for Oregon. We were talking about Mark Gronowski and the Iowa offensive line and wanting to be able to run the football. I don't picture Mark Gronowski in any scenario really lining up back up there and just lighting them up through the air. Well, I do think one of the strengths of Oregon's defense is the interior. Mari Washington, Bear Alexander, a couple interior defensive linemen should be able to hand up pretty stout against that Iowa offensive line. And I do feel like this one, and the weather conditions come into this, but I could see, and we mentioned this on the Cover 3 today, like what does a blowout look like? I think it's probably a 2-touchdown win. So even that, I don't see Oregon like putting up a ton of points, but I think Iowa could struggle to score with the ball as well. And I do think they're going to try to slow the game down the way they typically do. So my favorite, it is a low total, but I'm not afraid of it. I'm going to go under. I could see a 24-10 type of game unfold, maybe somewhere along the 24-13, something that's a lower scoring game, but a pretty comfortable win for Oregon.
This game opened up 43.5 for all the things you guys said. Again, 41.5, and we do have top 5 offense in the Ducks going against top 5 defense in points per game allowed from the Hawkeyes. So interesting to see how it all plays out according to you guys. So we'll go from Kinnick to Memorial Stadium here. Texas A&M laying the 7.5 against Missouri with a total of 48.5. Bo Perbula, by the way, our colleagues at 24/7 Sports saying walking boot. So it's more of a week-to-week or weeks thing, not like maybe like end of the regular season like they certainly feared initially in their game last week. So, Chip, I'm going to give you first word in terms of how Texas A&M, do they feel like they should have been number 1 in the rankings, and how do you think they enter this game with Mizzou?
No, they've got way different focus. Their focus is to get to Atlanta. You listen to Mike Elko in the locker room after they had that win against LSU a couple weeks ago. He talked about using the off week to get healthy. Then they return to action, and then they focus on getting to Atlanta, making the college football playoffs. So, no, they're not looking at the playoff rankings. They're looking at the SEC standings, and right now they're still sitting up there with the 0 in the loss column in the SEC standings. So for Texas A&M, what I'm looking at here is what are you doing to prepare yourself to be able to avoid any kind of letdown or any kind of slip up. I don't think you need any motivation coming out of Tuesday's playoff rankings. I think this is very much a schematic test, at least of not knowing what you're going to get from Matt Zollers, the young freshman quarterback for Missouri. And then on the other side, for making sure that Marcel Reed, Casey Concepcion, this run game that has been so effective behind a great offensive line, make sure that you're going to be able to get a good push against a Missouri defensive front that, for my money, is among the best in the entire SEC. These are two really, really good teams in the trenches. And I think that on both sides, whether it's Texas A&M's offense against Missouri's defense or Texas A&M's defensive pass rush, Cassius Howell and the rest of those boys going up against Missouri's offensive front, great trench warfare here in Como on Saturday. That's going to be one spot where I think this game is decided.
Oh, I want to see some of that trench warfare taking place because I have two plays this one. Probably the one I like the best is the under in this game. You mentioned Zoller coming out, potentially his first start. It looks like he should be starting. They're going to see a heavy host of Ahmad Hardy in the backfield trying to run the football. And I do think they have some success with it. I just wonder if it's sustainable. When you have a young quarterback, you just wonder, does he make a critical mistake? And I'll bank on that he does at some point in the game, probably late, that you would potentially see them struggle there. So I've got Texas A&M pulling away late in a lower scoring game. You mentioned that Texas A&M defense. I do think they're pretty stout. They have had a couple games. Notre Dame comes to mind, Arkansas, where they had to give up some points. But I think those teams are probably better offenses than the questionable Missouri team around a quarterback making his first start. I do think it helps them that they're affair at home, but I think this will be a lower scoring affair, and I do like A&M to come away with the win.
So a 2-for-1 for DK. Chip, you've isolated a first quarter play that you really like.
I mean, this is Eli Drinkwitz in his bag, right? You get a whole off week to get your freshman quarterback ready. Those first 15 plays are going to be crispy. All they're worried about is making sure that they don't get in 3rd and long, that if they do, they've got an escape hatch so that he doesn't end up having to deal with Cassius Howell, who's one of the best in the country. So let's have a little fun with the alpha nerd, as my friend Barton Simmons used to call him a long time ago. Eli Drinkwitz getting it done on the chalkboard, getting it done in practice, and showing you why he is one of those coaching candidates to watch for a lot of the biggest jobs in college football during this cycle. The Eli Drinkwitz advantage gets Missouri first quarter to the pay window.
All right, 2 ranked games down, 1 to go, and it's the Big 12 on display in terms of this last segment conversation that we're going to have BYU and Texas Tech in a double-digit spread at 52 at a hook. The Cougars are actually catching it. It's interesting because this number has gone from 9.5 to 10.5, and you talk about FBS teams to enter a conference game 8-0 or better and then be double-digit underdogs the last 10 years. That Baylor team did cover against Oklahoma back in 2019, but there hasn't been that situation in the last 2 instances. So, Danny, I'm going to give you first word in terms of like the stage that the Big 12 has here with Bachmeier and Martin, and then where are you at in terms of how you think the game script's going to go?
So I think one of the big winners last night was the Big 12 in the selection committee rankings, to see a couple of these teams ahead of Notre Dame, ahead of Texas, Oklahoma, where I think we thought they would be. But I think that was big. And yeah, sure, you're disappointed if you're BYU. Maybe you thought you'd be right behind the 3 undefeateds. But I do think they're pretty much in a really good position, a solid position from a national perspective. And I think this game is going to be really fun. I think it's going to be an opportunity for BYU to once again prove a lot of the critics. This is several times they've been underdogs, and they are on the road yet again, and yet they found a way to win games. And for Texas Tech, this is an opportunity for them to say, hey, we are a team that has one of the best defenses in the country, and when our quarterback is healthy, and Baron Morton, we can put up big points offensively. Remember, their only blemish on the season was at Utah. He had 2 picks in that game before he was knocked out, but still were able to find a win. So I think, and then of course they lost the game at Arizona State. So I think this game is going to be one for both of these to kind of really take a step to the forefront, and almost feel like a lock for the Big 12 championship game, which is going to be a huge implications for, of course, the college football playoff race.
Chip, why do you think the under's the play in this one at 52 and a hook?
Because Texas Tech's defense, as Danny mentioned, is one of the best in the entire country. I worry about whether BYU is going to be able to block that defensive front. I think they could force some turnovers. But I also think that Texas Tech's offense, even when they've got Baron Morton in the game, just kind of spins its wheels a little bit, gets caught in a little bit of mud as they're out there driving through the forest. And while they have shown us that against inferior competition, they can still go out there and put up 40-plus points, I do not think that BYU is inferior competition. I think that BYU defense is well coached. I think they will be prepared for what Texas Tech wants to do. So I think that Texas Tech continues to show us that while they've got that, Texas location and the Texas Tech branding and all those years of Mike Leach, Michael Crabtree, Patrick Mahomes, whoever, this is a Texas Tech team that is competing for the Big 12 title in the college football playoff because what they have done to invest in the defensive front, the defensive line, and the linebackers. I just think it's going to be a lower scoring game. Really, one of my favorite plays of the week is going to be the under right here.
And you're grabbing the points, DK. Here.
I am,
you can
but
get
I
the 10.
So this is I'm taking the 10.5 points with BYU. I'm taking the underdog here, but I do think this is one of those games. I felt this way about Vanderbilt and Texas last week, where the number is critical. If it was 9.5, I might think about taking Texas Tech, but because it's over that key number of 10, I'll go ahead and take the 10.5 points. BYU, I think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively enough. They're very careful with the football. They don't turn it off over a lot. Both of these teams don't turn the ball over a ton. They're really good at creating turnovers. But I think Chip and I play kind of correlates as well, because I do think it's a lower scoring game that stays inside that 10.5.
Yeah, Vandy, Texas 2.5 to 3.5, and it landed at 3. So key number of 10, grabbing the 10.5 in that instance here. Again, monitoring whether that closes or not. We'll wait and see a few days out from kickoff. Time to hit a break here on HQ Spotlight. When we come back, Indiana, a 14.5-point road favorite at Penn State. Too much, too little, or just right? Fellas giving their pick next. Welcome back to the show. We're going chronological the rest of the way. Got a couple Friday night games, but we do have the college football playoff projection. And even though this is a ranked show, technically Memphis is in the chat because they are the placeholder for the group of 5. 5.5-point favorites against Tulane Friday night out in Memphis, and right now they would be the 12 seed taking on Georgia. Back here with the fellas, Tulane dropped an egg against UTSA. The American kind of shooting itself in the foot, but again, for the time being, Memphis holds that slot, Chip. So 5.5, 55.5. I think you and DK are actually on opposite ends of this game, so give me your play in this one.
I think Memphis has played better this year. I think that Memphis doesn't have a resume that looks good if you just look at the teams that they have beat. I just think that the way that they have played has looked like they just are a little bit more in sync. And certainly the loss at UTSA adds to that. But even in wins against Northwestern and Duke and ECU, man, it's just red zone issues, penalties, just it's not a group that has necessarily been playing their best football. And so for that reason, in a game with huge stakes, I'm just going to go with the Memphis Tigers. I thought they did a great job after that emotional comeback win against South Florida. They were playing on the road against Rice as heavy favorites, jumped out to like a 31-7 halftime lead and didn't look back. I mean, that is handling your business. Tulane, to me, is more talented. On paper, I understand, why they had so much excitement coming into the season, but I've just seen their rating kind of decrease a little bit more each week, whether it's success rate, point per play margin, whatever you want to use. You look under the hood, and it's just a little bit suspect, so I'll take the Tigers at home and lay the points.
So I almost feel like this is one of those ones where it's a similar play you take in the Big 12 and the ACC when you see all these teams kind of grouped towards the top of it. To me, it feels like they're all about a field goal difference. So I think 5.5 is a little bit too many points there. John Sumrall, the head coach at Tulane, he's got a saying, it's so what, now what? Like, so what, you got blown out at UTSA. What are you going to do now about it? And I do think it's the right mentality to have. So I know it was an ugly loss to Jeff Traylor's squad out there in San Antonio, but I think this is a big bounce back opportunity. And maybe, just maybe, they were overlooking that opponent to get ready for this game. With a ton at stake, I think Jake Retzlaff and company get it done, at least keep it inside that number. So I'll take Tulane in the points.
Kicking off the same time Friday night from the Coliseum, 6 p.m. Pacific, will be USC taking on Northwestern. The line is 14.5, the total at 50 and a hook. DK, I'll give you first word. Trojans coming off a pretty poor offensive performance. Do they bounce back? Do they cover the number? You think so?
Jaden Maeva had his worst performance of the year. I do think they have a big bounce back performance here. We talk about, a USC team traveling to Big Ten country in the cold. Now you got Northwestern traveling out there where the weather's mild and should be perfect. But I think this is a disadvantage for Northwestern. They'd rather be playing USC in some cold weather conditions where it's a little bit ugly, potentially some rain. I think this is a get-right game for Lincoln Riley. Another team that is just lingering there. There are 3 2-loss teams, Iowa, USC, and Michigan, that are kind of all right in the same vicinity in the top 25. I think they realize they have the potential to potentially still keep their playoff hopes alive. I think they come in pretty attuned, and I think they have a pretty solid win.
Well, listen, the good news is the USC has never gotten drug into the mud against a Big Ten opponent. Oh no, wait, that happens all the time to USC is they just get drug into the mud. I don't hate your play, DK, but I'm going to be tackling the under for those reasons. I was looking at it. USC has not really played a back and forth the way that you would think about this USC team with Lincoln Riley and all the firepower. They haven't played that kind of game since 34-32 loss at Illinois. I mean, it was an impressive win against Michigan, but even Lincoln Riley himself called it a Big Ten win. And that was 31-13, final score even under this number right here. I think that Northwestern has a little bit of success with the run game, looking at that as something Northwestern does well offensively, and maybe somewhere where you can have some success against this USC defense, which I do think is a pretty solid unit overall. It is just the type of game on a quick turnaround Friday night against Northwestern. I just think there'll be less possessions in the game thanks to Northwestern's ground attack, and I could very much see USC getting drug into the mud just a little bit. So I will take the under. Think Trojans win.
Yep.
No upset alert from me, but I'm taking the under.
I think the market's with Chip, 52.5 last night, already trickling down to 50.5 before this Friday night game. Again, we're, of course, coming at you on Wednesday. Now let's move on to the Saturday slate. Start with noon. This should have been a ranked-on-ranked game. Certainly was on paper. to begin the year. We're talking about Indiana and Penn State. Hoosiers laying 2 touchdowns and a hook against the Nittany Lions with a total of 48.5. This was a great stat here, too, also for Indiana. First time favored over Penn State since at least 1978. So it's been that long, but that's where we live in 2025. Danny, you laid the 14.5 with the home side. Now you're comfortable laying the 14.5 with the road team, which IU, given, has shown that they are not afraid to put up them points.
I don't know what else you play in this game. Last week I tried to take Penn State against Ohio State. We saw how that worked. Of course, that was on the road, and they came up short there. But I think Indiana is just on this mission. And I was thinking about, because Kirk Cignetti does a really good job of hyping up his opponents, treating them like they're the best team out there. And I think all he has to do is remind his team the projections at the beginning of the season, how a lot of people had projected, including myself, for Penn State to win the Big Ten. And I still think you can remind them this defense is still pretty intact from the defense you thought it could be. And it still is an environment that could be one of the tougher ones to play in. But smoke them if you got them. Penn State is down. Indiana is up. I will lay those points.
So this is a handicap that I do think is significant, though it may seem a little bit silly. All right, Tommy? Mm-hmm. You, me, and DK all called the same amount of timeouts as Penn State interim coach Terry Smith did against Ohio State. Okay? Terry Smith went to the locker room at halftime with all 3 timeouts in his pocket. He went to the locker room after the game with all 3 timeouts in his pocket. I think Penn State football is in a we're just here so we don't get fined status. I think Penn State football, they are not quitting. They are trying and they are competing for only what they are required to do. I think this game gets slowed down. We've got some injury issues for Indiana as well. Not a lot of motivation for them to create extra possessions in this game. I just think clock moves a little quickly, and we do end up finishing under the total.
All right, so a chance for both of you guys to cash your plays. And again, Penn State 25-2 all-time against Indiana. Losses came in 13-20, and we anticipate here in 2025. Let's get to Starkville, number 5, Georgia, north of a touchdown from 7.5 to 8.5 against Hail State with a high total in the mid to high 50s. Chip, you've got one of these exotic third-quarter ones, and it's funny because here in the studio in Florida, we talked about halftime and Kirby Smart adjustments. So it's almost this blindly third quarter, much like the Warriors back in the day when they were having their runs with Steph Curry. You could just blindly bet them in the third quarter.
Oh, yeah, I got a lot of treasure maps, but let me take you to the gold at the end of this. It is going to be Georgia in the third quarter. You consider the 11 a.m. start time, Mississippi State, Starkville, sandwich spot between the cocktail party, Texas on deck next week. The idea that this might be a bit of a sluggish start for any team would make sense. And then you consider that Georgia is one of the most slow-starting elite teams in the country. I think that this is where you understand that the snapback, the halftime adjustments, what they do defensively to counter what Mississippi State has provided, and then offensively, them being able to take advantage of a Mississippi State defense that has been there to be able to be had. I think that Georgia in the third quarter minus 3.5 is the end of our treasure map. But Tommy, Danny, we're talking Mississippi State first half plus 4.5. We're talking first half under 27.5. If you want to tie all these together and then have the cherry on top be that Georgia third quarter, well, that's how you find the booty.
Oh, I love it. And if you want to throw in mine, that would be a really, wow, that treasure map would be really hard to complete. But I'm on the total for the game. I'm going over. So we would have to have some magic in order to get your first half under and the game total over. But maybe it is one of those ones where Georgia explodes. So I think Georgia's offense is going to be able to score at will against Mississippi State's defense. They have struggled to stop anybody. We saw them give up 24 unanswered points against Texas, a couple weeks ago. That was a devastating loss for them. But I do think Mississippi State's offense will be able to put up some points. It may not be pretty, it may be ugly, but I do feel like at some point they're going to take some shots and they're going to connect on them. Jeff Lebby, he's one of the better offensive minds. They've been able to score against other teams. I think they'll be able to do it. I see them, I was thinking about possibly taking Starkville at home. They've been close. They got their first SEC win a week ago, but I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to look at it and say this is a higher scoring game over that 57.5.
Number 1, Ohio State laying a big number at Purdue. This is a Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Ohio State has just been a cover machine, guys. Everywhere they go, they cover the number. 17.5 last week against Penn State, 29.5, anywhere in between. They've been good. So I set it up because this week you guys actually think the Boilermakers can cover the number. I will say, though, I think DK went full game. You're only going first half, Chip, so lay down the handicap in terms of why you feel better after 2 quarters than full game.
Just looking at a certain lack of urgency from Ohio State. I took Ohio State against Penn State. They ended up covering that spread, but it does feel, and this was in my notepad, that Ryan Day is in figuring some stuff out kind of mode right now, that this is a time where they are working through things that they need to do in order to get themselves better prepared for the Big Ten championship and the college football playoff. And I just think that some of that tinkering, especially when you're in a game where the home underdog is upset-minded, well, then maybe you are trying some stuff and maybe those shot plays don't end up hitting early on. Gives an opportunity for this Purdue offense to maybe, just maybe, score a touchdown. I mean, at 17.5 in the first half, to take Ohio State and lay these points is saying that they will score a touchdown on almost every first half possession. I think that it's just a little bit out of sync enough on the road. That big old drum home field advantage. I'll take Purdue in the first half plus this big number.
We have not seen Ohio State flat, but the times that we've seen them come out not quite as dominant, couple times on the road. I think of Washington. Now, Purdue is not Washington. They're more on the lines of a Wisconsin team that really struggled against Ohio State as well. But I do wonder, early kick, really not much to get enthusiastic about, not much to get motivated for, because I think they had that last week against Penn State. Still kind of a rivalry game, a game that was circled at the beginning of the season. This is a game no one had circled. You're just thinking all Ohio State has to do is show up. But Purdue is a better team, and it's kind of crazy because it does not show in the results in the win column. But I do think Barry Odom has a defense that's playing a little bit tougher, and they do have a mobile quarterback that could present some problems, maybe score a couple touchdowns late in the game. The one thing that resonates with me when we talk to Ryan Day, he's talking about load management. This would be a game I would think he would circle and say, let's get our guys out early. Let's get them rested before the home stretch. So I think this could be some backups plan where you do see Purdue get the cover. It's a big, big number, too.
Yeah, you guys are similar in mind in terms of the approach of Ryan Day and Ohio State, which, by the way, they have the only FBS team to not have trailed in the second half this season. We don't just anticipate that'll be an issue, although they could come out flat, or Purdue could present maybe a little bit of resistance, if you will, in the first half there for both of you guys. Okay, last game in this block, we've got an FCS, FBS game. We haven't had one of these since like week 2 or week 3, gents. Thankfully, though, we do have a line.
Yes, we do.
Citadel and Ole Miss hit a good old 54.5. So, Danny, you're willing to take and grab 29.5 points? Are we having to sweat 54 in this weekend?
We're definitely sweating this bad boy out. I think you'll probably see a lot of Austin Simmons in this game, Trinidad Chambliss. Shoot, even when games are in contention, we see Austin Simmons come in the red zone situations. I think Lane Kiffin wants to get him some work, wants to keep him happy. It makes me nervous. But I do think this is a game that you look at, again, sort of where it resides on the schedule. There's no need for Ole Miss to try to get style points. They don't need them. They need to stay healthy. So get the starters in, get them out. 54 is a massive number. I know Lane will probably pay attention to this one, but I'm going to count on Citadel to put up enough of a fight with some of the backups, maybe their starters still in the game, to keep this inside that massive point spread.
Oh, Lords of Discipline. That's what's on his bookshelf right now. We got that. The Citadel, shout out to Pat Conroy, RIP. Look, I'm going to go with the under here. As soon as we saw the numbers, which just populated on the board today, I just started running through final scores. And unfortunately, I do think that 56-0 might be one of those scores that might be there. But what I don't see is 56-10. What I don't see is anything more than 56-7. And so at 64.5, I don't think we're going to be getting above 64 points. So that's where I'm going to be going. Ole Miss has no motivation to get anybody hurt. And the Citadel's offense is already going to lead to a lot of running the football. And when they do get any first downs, they might only get 5 first downs. But every first down that they get is going to be another couple minutes that they can chew off the clock. So let's shrink the game. Running clock if you got it, and let's go under the total.
Okay, halfway through this week, week 11. We'll hit a break here at HQ Spotlight. When we come back, Miami on the outside looking in on the ACC auto bid and a college football playoff appearance yet again. Can we trust the Canes to cover the 4 touchdowns against Syracuse? One of our guys says yes. Welcome back to the show. You know, last segment we had Danny taking a lot of spreads, Chip giving a lot of totals. We're flipping things here in this early Saturday slate. 3:30, Syracuse catching 28.5 against Miami, who now returns to play at Hard Rock, South Florida. Totaled 45.5. I mentioned in the tease, one of you guys felt good about laying the 4 touchdowns in a hook, and that would be one, Chip Patterson.
I mean, feel good is a different phrase. You know, we put in these picks before I saw them revealed as the number 18 team in the playoff rankings. Yikes. But here's what I thought. Like, this is what my notes were. If this Miami team has any grit, they're going to put their butt-kicking shoes on, all right? Because this Syracuse team is all out of sorts. We've got a wide receiver coach that has been ousted. We are rearranging quarterback coach, offensive coordinator, play caller. I don't know if you watched that game against North Carolina, but they trotted out QB3. Of course, that's after Ricky Collins. Then they went to QB4. They are trying everything because the offense is fundamentally broken. And so, if there is any grit in this Miami team, then you don't let Syracuse score in this game. And if that's going to be the case, then yes, even if they just run the ball with Mark Fletcher, they should eventually be able to run off 30 points. So I am not going to give this out as a lock. It is my best bet for the game, which obviously shows you there's not a lot that I love. But, man, this is going to be a gut check Saturday for the Miami Hurricanes because it looks like all of your early season goals are off the table. ACC championship, college football playoff, national championship. So what are you going to do with Syracuse in town?
Oh, boy, you are just taking a risk that I am not willing to go for because I just checked the weather. It is a 3:30 kickoff. It is 84 degrees and sunny. There are better things to do in South Florida for Miami Hurricane fans than to go at Hard Rock Stadium and watch an ugly football game. But the ones that do go, they're probably going to be booing Mario Cristobal and those Miami Hurricanes for blowing the game last week against SMU. I think this has underwritten all over it. I know there's a thought process that Miami, they still have this sliver of hope. I think the playoff selection committee dropping them to 8 spots away from Notre Dame, having them at 18, it really looks like their playoff hopes are slim to none. I don't know how those players respond. Not to mention the fact that Mario Cristobal's biggest problem is he doesn't love to keep the pedal to the metal. I could see Miami going up 21-3 and then kind of just sitting on the ball, just saying, all right, let's just get out of here. And who knows what the heck happens then. So I'll take the under. I do think there's a chance we could both win this one because I don't think Syracuse is going to be able to score many points against that Miami defense. Plus, their offense has been struggling mightily ever since they lost Evangeli.
Miami football down bad. Maybe some of the Dolphins' paper trash bags may have come to Hard Rock Stadium for Miami. Again, they still have a chance, but the analytics certainly aren't behind them there. Let's get to Auburn. 6.5 against Vandy in a total in the mid-40s. Hugh Freeze, obviously the news that he is gone with the Tigers. Chip, the handicap for Vanderbilt, I'm curious how much of the comeback against Texas, making it close, onside kick, has you believe in that laying the 6.5, or does it, or is it a fate of the Tigers here?
No. I mean, a lot of that is the heart, everything that you would want if you wanted to imagine this Vanderbilt team in terms of like, are they warriors? Do they quit? How do they respond to adversity? All of the buzzwords that Clark Lee has been talking about, not just this season, not just last season, but even when just winning a couple SEC games was worth shooting off fireworks and celebrating, 2-3 years ago at the beginning of his tenure. I think we saw all of that on display in terms of their ability to come back and really be able to give themselves a shot after being really outmatched. Vanderbilt needed to play a clean game to knock off Texas, and they simply did not do that. They didn't take care of the football. They had a lot of dumb penalties. But in order to respond to like that, it took some really strong DNA. I'm going to ride with that DNA. I mean, you're going to talk interim bump this. DJ Durkin wants the job that. I'm just going to go with the team that has a much higher floor and higher ceiling. I'll take the doors and lay the points.
How about just saying Auburn has one of the best defenses in the entire country, and defense travels. And I know that Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt came back, but a lot of that was garbage time. Early in the game against Texas, he was running for his life. It did not look great. Then Texas took the foot off the gas. They had a couple quick scores, and it's like, oh my goodness, what happened? I think Vanderbilt's offense could struggle against Auburn's defense. Now, do I have any confidence that Auburn can fix things on the offensive side of the ball? The reason that Hugh Freeze got fired? No. But I do think this could be a close, lower scoring game. I do think DJ Durkin is coaching. There's a lot of former players and Auburn backers that are saying, give DJ Durkin a chance. This defense should have been championship worthy. I think there's a chance the players might actually come up and show up fired up for that prospect that could be a scenario that you could see unfold. So I'll take Auburn and the under here in this game. Not Auburn. I kind of like them with the points, but I like the under as my favorite play.
You like it better. Okay. Yeah. Third game in this block, Camp Randall, 4:30 Eastern. Oddly enough, we have games all 45.5 in this block, the 3 games here. And Danny going under once again. Huskies, Badgers, points at a premium. You think does Wisconsin even get to?
Well, that's the issue here. And I mean, I would never want to take 3 road favorites. What could go wrong there? Like my man Chip just did. But I'm going to take the under on this one. I know there's some rumblings. Does Wisconsin roll out a new QB that, as a freshman that could, spark this offense? I don't trust it. I think Washington could struggle somewhat here on the road, but I think their defense is good enough. So I would lean towards the Chip's line of thinking, that road favorite, but I just think that Wisconsin offense, I don't trust them, and no matter what they could do, I need to see it first. I just still think Washington's a really good football team with a really strong defense, so I'll take the under in this one.
Yeah, this is a Jimmy's Joe's problem. Washington is more talented, and Washington's been able to, have a little bit of their own reset to get ready for the incredible opportunity that is, if you win out, you could be in the college football playoff. And so while things might sputter a little bit for DeMond Williams, as long as he takes care of the football, then Washington should be able to win this handily. I just do not think that Wisconsin's going to be able to score enough points to cover the spread. And the Huskies still have too much firepower that even a dead quarter would still leave a lot of opportunities for them to be able to score.
Yeah, almost like 80% of DeMond Williams' turnovers are in that Michigan game. So that's just like the one-off that he certainly had. He's been certainly playing better in everything else that they've done so far for Jed Fish and company. By the way, Luke Fickell 0-10 versus ranked teams with Wisconsin. Let's hit a break. Almost home stretch time here on the show. So again, Notre Dame ahead of Texas in the CFP. They got Navy laying a big number, and they need to continue to impress. Home stretch with DK and Chip. We're going through Saturday night games. We start with Wake Forest catching 6.5 against UVA. 48 and a hook is the total. Chip, lay-in points has been a theme so far this week for you. But a lot of road teams. This time you get the home team with the Cavaliers laying just under a tutty.
Yeah, and again, numbers matter, right? Our friend Todd Furman, bet the number, not the name. I normally ignore that, but in this case, 6.5 is very relevant for my interests. Not very impressed with the way that Wake Forest handled business against Florida State just last week. So note this is the second straight road game for the Demon Deacons. They had a lot of penalties. They had some turnovers. The kind of sloppy play that is just not quite what you would want to see, as they now have to go from playing a talented Florida State team now to playing a team that is leading the way in terms of the ACC conference standings. And while I understand that this might get a chuckle in some corners of our great nation, this Scott Stadium, the one that we are going to find in this game, I do think it's going to be a lively environment that can help Virginia in a little bit. Finally, after what I think was 3 weeks of regression for that Virginia offense that started so hot, finally saw a little bit of a bounce back the other way. So I'll take the Wahoos and lay the points.
Yeah, I thought you saw Chandler Morris play a little bit better. They obviously had the big pick 6 at the end of that game. Now they have to come back after that West Coast trip. Wake Forest, after a couple offensive struggles, I do think it might have been more about the opponents. The win against SMU didn't put up many points. The game against Florida State didn't put up many, only put up 7 points. I think that might have been about those defenses, which I don't think Virginia's defense is as strong as those. So I think Virginia scores plenty of points against Wake Forest, but I also think Wake could add to that total as well. So I'm on a higher scoring affair, or at least high enough to go over the 48.5.
Next up, we've got Cal and Louisville. An initial thought when I saw this game was, wow, that's just too many points. I don't know what Cal team will show up. I know the travel and all that stuff, but the 20.5, Danny, you want to grab the points? That's just my lean off the bat.
That was my first thing, was this is the ACC, and just like every league, like the Big 12, the SEC, and the ACC have all had teams kind of beat up on each other, and you've seen a lot of parity. So this, to me, is a parity play. Cal has played some teams tough. Sure, I get it. Some games have got away from them, but I do think this is one where I love Louisville. I think they're a really good football team. Isaac Brown is out, though. He's been such a constant source of their offense. He's going to miss this game. They're wondering when he's going to come back. I think that could come into play somewhat for Louisville. So at 20.5 is just too many points for me, so I'll take Cal.
Yeah, great opportunity for us both to cash here. I'm going to go with the under. I don't think Louisville is a great offensive team outside of Isaac Brown. I think Miller Moss has been a little disappointing. He's been hot and cold. And I think the MVP for the Louisville Cardinals, if they are able to get the job done, is going to be defensive coordinator Ron English, because this Cards defense has really been able to keep them in games when the offense hasn't necessarily had it all going. Now, when you've got players like Chris Bell, when you've got the opportunity, Colin Lacey, to push the ball down the field and to be able to hit some explosive plays, the end-of-game statistics can end up looking pretty good. But I'm just telling you, watching this Louisville offense on a down-to-down basis, they have not been great. The other piece of this under, Tommy, you just mentioned it. Cal is on their 4th game in 4 weeks. Well, that's not crazy, Chip. Almost anybody does that. Yeah, but how many times are you in California on the East Coast, then back to California, now on the East Coast? And in that stretch, you've had games come down to the wire. You've had overtime games. You've had games that come down to the last play. I just wonder how much gas is left in the tank for this Cal team. So I'm going to end up taking the under for a banged-up Cards against the gold triple platinum medallion status Cal Golden Bears.
Fair enough. And first ever meeting between these two schools. No such problem in the Saban Bowl with LSU and Alabama. The line 9.5. Of the total at 49.5. Chip, I'm going to give you first word. You've got a spread play in this one. Is it a lean? Is it a like? Or is it a love?
Oh, yeah. No, this is a lean.
Okay.
I wish that I could give you a like. I wish I could give you a love, just because this team, the Alabama Crimson Tide, and this game has meant so much to really all 15 years that I've been here at CBS Sports covering college football. But it's a sad state of affairs as Frank Wilson leads this interim squad in. What are we going to get from LSU's offense? I don't know. Are they going to try someone else at quarterback? I don't know. But it's very hard to imagine anything being successful when you can't block up front. So I'm just going to take Alabama at home in Bryant-Denny Stadium, where they are 31-1 since the start of 2021. Lay it with the Tide.
You know what I do know? I do know Ty Simpson has been playing quarterback as good as anybody in the country. And I know that Julian Sayin and Fernando Mendoza have been getting a lot of attention lately. And we haven't seen Ty Simpson in a couple weeks because of their bye week. I think they're going to put up a ton of points with Jeremy Bernard, Ryan Williams on the outside. Their run game has been getting better. The question I need 17 points. I feel like 35 to 17 puts me over that total. I need somewhere in that vicinity. I feel like I can get it out of LSU, but I don't trust it. But there's also a chance I can get 42 out of Alabama. So I think there's multiple ways to win this one. I know there's the thought of an interim bump, like we saw Florida almost knock off Georgia last week. I don't know if we get it, because I just don't know what they can do differently with a porous offensive line and the quarterback, that's been struggling. Do they switch maybe to a different play? I don't know, but that's all I need, LSU, is 17 points. I think that pushes my total over, so I'm going to count on that.
Yeah, this was another sort of disappointment matchup, given we thought it would be ranked on rank, much like Indiana and Penn State. We could have had, 5 ranked on ranked games that we're talking about this week. But that's not the case. Last but not least, we do have Notre Dame and Navy. It's a big spread. Again, Notre Dame, the narratives, Danny, they need to score points. They need to be impressive. And so far it's worked, because the committee's got them at 10.
Oh, good. We can get an impressive win over Navy. And before that was we didn't get an impressive win over Boston College, but that didn't matter because it's Notre Dame, and they were 0-2 and still ranked early in the season. And I know the committee's not supposed to pay attention to the AP rankings, but clearly they did. To me, Notre Dame is the most overranked, overrated team by the selection committee. I get it. Their strength of schedule is hard, but you've lost the only 2 games that you've played. And so and a win against USC was nice. That was a good win. We'll see how that one stacks up at the end of the season. It might look better if USC continues to win. but it drives me nuts that we could see a second year in a row with last year was one loss to a Northern Illinois, which felt like an elimination loss. That should be for a Power 4 team as a 4-touchdown favorite. This year you had a couple close losses, but the difference in them and Miami is pretty preposterous. When they're 8 spots away by the committee rankings, it tells you that the calendar matters. When you lose matters. Because I hear last night, oh, Notre Dame's getting better. Well, don't you think a lot of teams will get better against those 6 teams that they've beaten? It's a little bit ridiculous. I still think Notre Dame's probably going to get in. It's not me saying they don't belong in, but I do think they are getting the easiest kind of treatment from the committee to still view them as a top 10 team without beating anybody of note.
What do you think, Chip?
I'm all this playoff talk. We're missing the opportunity to get in on the lock of the week.
Whoa.
Listen, I have just been chomping. I've been waiting all show.
Saving the best for last.
Listen, I saw the following teams move the football with a lot of effectiveness: Air Force, Temple, FAU, and North Texas. Do we think that Notre Dame, led by C.J. Carr, Jeremiah Love, Darian Price, do we think they are better offenses than Air Force, Temple, FAU, and North Texas? Oh, yes, we certainly do. And this is the last little wrinkle here, Notre Dame defensive coordinator Chris Ash. Now, if you have been at Notre Dame for a long time, you've got the book, right? You know how to get the team ready for Navy. This is his first time with this program as he came in from outside the program to replace Al Golden. They've got a lot bigger games that are still left. They've had some big work that's been done, but nothing against Army, no triple option work. Let's say Navy can spring a couple of explosive plays with their option attack. Notre Dame goes for about 42, 45 points. One of my favorite plays on the board this week is the over in Notre Dame Navy. Ain't no tackling to be had anywhere in South Bend.
And to be clear, you laying the points? You want the Fighting Irish in the number?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, what else are you going to do? I mean, Notre Dame's just going to blow out another team. Or it's another impressive win. Congrats.
All right, DK, he's been on a roll. Don't argue with him. He's had a nice month. Chip as well, the potential to get back to 500 or better. Guys, certainly appreciate it. Those are the ranked unranked matchups for the week. And the Cover 3 podcast, they'll have their Locks Pod Thursday, Instant Reaction on Saturday with Tom Fordelli, Bud Elliott, and the aforementioned DK and Chip.